Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Warren, and this is Me Reimagined, a space where we unlock the frozen parts of ourselves, the parts we hide from and hide from the world, so we can learn to believe we're enough. This is the 7th episode in an 8-chapter series looking at how not enoughness drives us to self-abandon and why we might need to forgive ourselves for that. Today, we are going to be looking at how our not enoughness strategies shut us off from and block us from adding value to the world. Shutting down and out not only isolates you, but also shuts you off from living your purpose. I hope that if something in this episode resonates with you, that you will reach out and join the Me Reimagined Facebook community group. It's a space where we share meaningful things and encourage each other. A community where we see the best in each other, even when we can't see it in ourselves. I'll put the link for that group in the show notes. Chapter 7. The girl, despite her 47 years, still felt young, both physically but also mentally. She knew there was so much more to learn. She felt untested in many ways, though she had gone through her share of trials. One thing she was learning now was how to open up when she felt unworthy. This was the exact opposite of what she wanted to do when her not enoughness gremlin whispered in her ear. Everything in her wanted to constrict, to hide the lack that she was so ashamed of. She often even hid it from herself, not really acknowledging why she was avoiding people. This hiding what she didn't want to know was unconscious and arrived by simply disconnecting from herself. Sometimes she noticed the disconnection, sometimes she didn't. When she noticed it, it was usually through behaviors that she knew were associated with feeling not enough. Watching Netflix when she wasn't even interested in what she was watching. Eating sugar. This morning it was waffles. Not making time for things that she knew nourished her, like breath work, exercise. When enough of those behaviors finally added up, she'd clue into her emotional state and realize she disconnected from herself. Luckily, the times she disconnected from herself were less frequent and sometimes only lasted a few hours. There were also times when she was able to recognize the feelings before the behaviors emerged and choose to intentionally reconnect and take a walk in nature to soothe herself. The waffles this morning were the clue that awoke her to her emotional state. She had gone to a workshop last night with the same group for which she had hosted a workshop 2 weeks prior. And this workshop was being led by a woman she felt drawn to and admired. She admired how this woman was so intensely engaged in her work. She appreciated how the woman's questions revealed a deep intelligence that drove straight to the heart of the matter. She admired how she spoke up and easily admitted she wanted to do something, but didn't know yet how to make it happen. And when that something had happened for the woman, she had gotten a call from a business school to teach personal mastery. The girl's gremlin started whispering insidious comparisons. And so, when the woman had reached out to get a coffee, the girl didn't pick up the connection. Seeing her again last night, feeling inspired by the workshop, the girl thought she would like to stay after the workshop and make the connection. But the end of the night found her putting on her coat and walking out the door without having made it happen, even when the woman had again mentioned coffee. The morning waffles initially felt warm and fluffy, until too many of them lodged uncomfortably in her belly. But this technique of dulling pain with food had ceased to work the way that it once had. Now it simply pointed out that the food didn't actually soothe the ache inside her. The ache to believe in herself, believe that she too could unlock possibilities for herself, To believe that the woman who was so passionate about her work might see that same passion reflected in her and want to collaborate. The waffles were a signal that she was upset with herself, that she had yet again shut down, shut out, and hidden away the value she had to offer. She spent the morning restless, struggling to get traction on her to-do list. But by noon, she had made up her mind. It was a choice: choose herself or abandon herself. When she abandoned herself, like she had again last night, she walked out the door alone rather than in company. She cut herself off from possibilities, new collaborations, friendships, and, according to an episode of the podcast Diary of a CEO, friendships later in life were rare and harder to come by. She decided in that moment that she would no longer commit to believing she was not enough, because that's what she was doing every time she constricted and shut out. Every time she made a fear-based decision and didn't risk showing up whole and open, she recommitted to maintaining her belief that she was not enough, and in this particular case, not capable. She decided to do an experiment. She would test how possible it was to open up when she felt the need to hide, how possible it was to make a values-based, risky decision in the face of her fear. She decided for 1 month she would do the opposite of what her gremlin voice suggested. If it told her she was unlovable, she'd show someone how much she loved them. If it told her to be quiet, she'd shout. If it told her she wasn't ready, she'd do the thing immediately. If it told her the woman wouldn't want to collaborate, she'd suggest a partnership. And with that decision, the craving for waffles dissipated. The end. And that is the 7th reason I need to forgive myself. When you listen to the gremlin's messages, when you follow its directives and shut out, armor up, or pretend, you don't honor yourself and you don't share the value that you have to offer. I shut myself off from living my purpose, from fulfilling a top value of connection, from having meaningful friendships. Is this something that you also need to forgive yourself for? Let me give you another example of how this plays out. I have a friend who's a fellow executive coach who I admire. She's incredibly smart and doing the hard work. She, like me, got much of her validation externally. I say got because we aren't in touch so much anymore. We were very close, sharing both our personal and professional journeys, and I enjoyed our conversations, which always inspired me and made me feel connected both to her and to the larger universe. In our relationship, it felt like we were equals, similar ages, similar background of leadership positions, relatively new to the coaching field, each with kids, each navigating a professional transition and our relationships. We went on vacation together for her birthday, and she had planned a retreat. Unfortunately, we walked out of that weekend with a friendship that was, in some indefinable way, damaged and has not since recovered. She had planned a sort of retreat with a group of friends focused on growth and self-development. I think the misunderstanding started with the word retreat and what we each envisioned for the time together. I was tired from life at that moment. I had just moved in with a partner and was navigating the stress of trying to blend a 6-person family without yet being aware of my not enough gremlins. And trying to find time to continue building my coaching business, which was taking a hit from all of the extra time spent preparing things for 6 people instead of 2, took a lot of my energy. I was also very much trying to do it all right and feeling like I wasn't quite hitting the mark. My gremlins were running rampant, making off with what little emotional energy I had left and directing it to harass me into deeper exhaustion. So I heard the word retreat and thought, yes, I need a rest and time with a group with whom I had shown up more authentically than with most seemed like it would be a balm for my soul. Her idea of retreat was more about actively practicing growth and spending time together. Rest wasn't so much on the agenda. But I find digging into complex psychology, well, rather invigorating. So initially I was on board. Plus, we did yoga, so there were some restful moments. She planned most of the days with activities and outings, and then the group stayed up late into the night drinking wine and catching up. I managed to make it past my bedtime each night, but around 10:30 or 11 p.m., I just felt so weary that I would take myself off to bed, not making the 1 a.m. bedtime with the rest of the group. There came a moment in the weekend where she invited me to deliver part of a training that we had both done for the rest of the group. I had found the training impactful, so I was happy to help. What I didn't realize is that what she had in mind was that we would unroll it in a very specific way, almost professionally, as we had gone through it, so that the group would get the most out of it. Looking back, I can see that she wanted to empower the group to benefit from the training the way we had, and her intention was beautiful. The way that it played out was less beautiful. I was tired, and I didn't think I was at work, so I didn't prepare for the morning gathering with friends the way that I would have if I was being paid for the training. I didn't review how it was introduced and the exercises prior to sharing it, and so I left a few things out that my friend felt were really important to include. But instead of throwing them into the conversation, she would turn to me and ask if I thought that was important to share, and then prompt me to share it. Somehow the power dynamic in that moment shifted from two friends, two equals, to a teacher coaching a student. And of course, my not enough gremlin raised its boggly-eyed head and, picking up a theme undermining my life at that moment, suggested I wasn't doing it right. In that instant, the place that I had come to hoping for rest and acceptance became unsafe in my mind. I reacted. I armored up. I lashed out, snapping, "Well, why don't you do it if you want it done in such a specific way?" And after that, I withdrew, stonewalling. I was present for the rest of the weekend, but not emotionally. I boxed that and all the vulnerability up and took it to my room, sobbing in every private moment I had. Looking back, I can see that I wasn't asking for what I needed. I had needed rest. I hadn't communicated that, and as it was her birthday weekend, I felt as if I should follow her plan. I didn't feel I had a choice, and I didn't see how I could get my needs met. And then my gremlin got triggered, setting off a trifecta of powerlessness, exhaustion, and then self-punishment for not being enough to do it right. I responded to that trifecta by withdrawing, the way I had with the woman hosting the workshop in Chapter 7. I went to bed earlier and earlier each of the nights of the vacation as the group bonded, and went to bed later and later. So I missed out on much of the merriment. Because I carried such exhaustion and heaviness that I wasn't admitting to, I think I drained some of the lightness and energy out of the activities that I attended. I am habitually optimistic. I am inspired and intrigued by the emotional and psychological webs that we spin throughout our lives. I am good at holding space and at being comfortable with mess and emotions. I see the best in people when they don't see it in themselves. I admired my friend and wanted to celebrate her. I bring lots of light and energy to groups that I'm part of. But because I took the gremlin's message to heart, I was none of those things that weekend. I shut down and out, isolating myself and my pain, which cut me off from the beautiful things that I am, the things that add value to the world. Part of my purpose is vulnerably sharing my story to help others thaw their frozen parts and learn to see their beauty. Absorbing that gremlin message cut me off from my purpose and isolated me, which of course exacerbated my feeling of not doing it right and not belonging. And this pattern went on for months after that weekend, derailing many other things in my life. Had I asked for what I needed, rest? Had I said no to leading a session? Had I been kind to myself and accepted that I was tired and feeling like I wasn't enough? Had I stayed open and vulnerable about that feeling and about being exhausted, I wouldn't have armored up, withdrawn, been cut off from my purpose. The outcome of that weekend and the months that followed would have been very different. And perhaps our relationship would have withstood a misstep and supported me during that time. Giving myself the grace now that I wasn't able to give then, I can see that I was depleted physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I can see that despite that, I was trying my best to try to manage that exhaustion and please my friend while continuing my internal development. If that weekend could have happened differently, it would have happened differently. It didn't, and there's a reason for it. One which I don't yet fully understand, but which I trust will be revealed in time. Last week, I announced a 7-day Gremlin challenge, and many of you joined me in spotting, challenging, and reframing your negative self-talk. If you didn't join in, it's not too late to use the 5-step, 5-minute process that I shared to do a self-paced challenge. I can promise you it's worth it. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But part of that exercise was about understanding the impact of those messages, how they shape your life. In the 2 examples from my life that we just walked through, when I shut down and out, it cut me off from my purpose. Besides making me feel alone and terrible about myself, it cut me off from my integrity, from my values. As you map the gremlin voices in your life, trace their reverberations and impacts. Look for how you react to those messages, how they change your natural behaviors, and how they cut you off from your purpose and integrity. In the beginning, I blamed my friend for being dictatorial about the weekend, even as I internalized the idea that I wasn't as professional as her. This changed what I manifested for months. It cut me off from my value of connection. It blocked my willingness to vulnerably share my story. It prevented me from holding space for others. And I spread not enoughness rather than love, because when I withdrew, it cut off my acceptance of others, my support and praise, a coldness which deeply affected all of those relationships. If you gave yourself compassion and acceptance, if you opened up and shared about not feeling enough when your gremlin was triggered, what would change? Think back to the last time you felt less than, back to an interaction where you hid part of yourself. Reflect on the last time you took your behavior apart after an event. How did the hiding and self-criticism shape how you felt and your outcomes? How would they change if you did the opposite? What would be the opposite? Could you test that? Could you get curious and take a small step toward opening and acknowledging the next time you feel not enough? Today, I am grateful for laughter. A friend pointed out recently that she didn't really laugh with me anymore. And it's true. Sometimes doing this work makes me really serious and earnest, both of which are qualities of mine, but are out of balance because laughter and silliness is a big part of my personality and life. So, to get more laughter back in life, I decided that my Halloween costume for the party tomorrow is going to be a fortune teller, called Mama Draga. I am going for smoky black eyes, midnight glitter, giant hoop earrings, and a lot of funny fortunes that I will hand out when people enter my booth. I'm hoping that it will make us laugh, but also make us connect, because some of the fortunes end with reflective questions. I am grateful for my 8-year-old, who is navigating his own not enough gremlins. He was very upset that he thought he was being excluded from a group recently. We talked about what he might fear about himself in that situation. We looked at how many stories he could tell himself about that incident. I can see that, like me, he's drawn to believe the one that matches his feelings, the one that depicts everyone involved at their worst. It was hard for him to take down the armor and open up about the subject. I'm proud of him for trying. I know that if he is beginning the journey at 8 rather than 40, he will have a superpower when he's my age. I am also proud of myself for the work I have put in. I am seeing results big time. I managed to navigate a recent situation that I'll go into in more detail in a future podcast, and that I've been struggling to navigate with grace. Yesterday, I managed to get curious rather than aggressive. I managed to soothe myself mid-conversation, and I managed to thank the not enough gremlins and stay open and vulnerable. I am so proud of myself for persevering, even when the gremlin claws are very sharp. And I know that while the situation has not yet changed, the very fact that I am showing up differently changes the equation. So I will get a different outcome, even if I don't know what that yet is. So a big whoop whoop to all of you out there willing to keep trying. If you found this episode interesting or useful, there are 3 low-effort, high-impact ways you can support us. First, rate the podcast. Leave us some stars. Second, follow the podcast. Get updates when new episodes drop. And lastly, share it with a friend who might need to hear that they're amazing. Send them the link to the podcast and let them know that you see them. You see that they are doing their best, and that's enough. You can find all episodes of Me Reimagined on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you leave a voice note or a comment, I'll reply. With love, until next time.
You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone.